Every channel, and welcome to, I don't know how long it's been 100 degrees here in New Orleans, but 2 more days and I'm turning into a fried egg, I think. We haven't had any 100-degree days for like 13 years, and now we're on like the 10th in a row or something. That's it.
Ouch.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's been brutal. It's been brutal. And just a quick note, you'll see the background behind me is a picture of course, the late but wonderful Gail O'Connor. The nominations for this year's Gail O'Connor Spirit Award are now officially open, and there's a landing page on LinkedIn, Gail O'Connor Spirit Award. You can go there, and the form is there. Pick it up. Please nominate some folks. We'd love to see you there. And as always, I'm joined by Rachi. Now he's in Maryland. He's here. He's stateside.
I made it stateside. It was, it was a couple weeks on the boat, but I managed to survive, making it for no iceberg.
It's just a coincidence. They start playing football and you show up in Maryland, right?
But what do you know? Weird like that.
Who knew? Glad to have you here, Rachi, as always. And we are happy to have with us as our special guest today, Nick Wittenberg, who is, and is this your actual title? You are a specialist leader?
That's correct, Tom.
That is the title, specialist leader, which means focusing on legal technology policy at Deloitte. You're employed by.
That's correct.
Great. Well,
That's
welcome.
correct.
Thanks for
having me.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Nick.
So tell us a little bit about your background. How where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get into law and technology and the interface in between? What attracted you there? Got you motivated?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you all for having. You guys had a lot of really exciting people on the program, so it's exciting to be on this. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and probably when I was a senior in high school, did a senior project and followed an attorney around and just loved it. Also in high school, I got a saying to me that's followed me throughout my career: don't anticipate, just participate. So while we all want this very quick and linear path, I've had things happen for the better by just showing up, raising your hand. That's been really exciting for me. So when I went to college, I interned a lot in the DC area and really fell in love.
Where did you go to school?
I went to University of Toledo.
Okay.
And my undergrad was in political science. And so naturally gravitated to the District of Columbia, from the Hill, DC Attorney General, and really enjoyed what was going on. And obviously took the LSAT and went to law school at University of Toledo and continued interning and clerking and externships in Toledo and in DC. And so after I graduated undergrad, I was a project assistant at a law firm in Columbus, Ohio, known as Vorey, Sater, Seymour and Peace, which got me into the environmental space and well as eDiscovery. So at the time, we would go with partners to client sites and do the initial interviews and do hard copy document pulls. This was right when eDiscovery was starting to take off. So we would have companies scan the documents in and then go back and work with the associates and partners in identifying the documents. That came to help me when I was in law school. I took a course, and it was a flex course, and it was a gentleman from EPA, and he hired law clerks. And so wonderful program. I remember he said, we're a national program. We're going to hire from national schools, and still fellow clerks I still keep in touch with today. And really, really enjoyed it.
And sorry, where did you go to law school?
University of Toledo.
Toledo.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
And so that was really exciting. And so what I did is, I clerked with a wonderful federal judge, externed Judge Vern Armstrong in Toledo, Court of Appeals Judge Peter Handwerk. And then my 3L second semester, I was a visiting student at University of Baltimore, where Toledo's former dean went. And that way, during the day, I was a law clerk at EPA Criminal, and really just enjoyed the experience. I would roughly say EPA is made up of 50% attorneys, not only doing legal work, but policy roles and working with our science and experts in the tough areas. So when I
sorry, so you were at Baltimore before the new building, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it worked out. And yes, I've seen that beautiful new building they put up there, and that's a wonderful experience for students now.
Yeah.
Right.
You had to
I got to interject though. I got to ask a quick question. You mentioned, I think it was in high school, you said you got interested in the law because you had a situation where you were following a lawyer around. I just had a flash of Bruiser Stone in the Rainmaker by John Grisham. Like, what sort of an attorney did you follow around? What did he do?
Yeah. So I kind of follow a couple of them around, and I would contact attorneys and judges just to sit in on court. And so some of them were criminal, civil, and one thing I did in undergrad as well is I was an intern in the public defender's office.
Nice.
In municipal court.
Yep.
And so that was another great experience, giving interaction with lawyers and judges and police officers and prosecutors.
A lot of action in
I really
the
enjoyed
public defender's office. Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my opening back in those wonderful high school days, is where you can go potentially with a law degree.
Cool.
And still engaged with my law school. Yeah. So
yeah, you're doing a semester in Baltimore, and then what were you doing at night?
So at night, I was taking business association and those really trust and estate classes. At finishing up law school, I put those off to the end, where most individuals take those. They're 2 all year to knock them out. Right. And so it was a very interesting experience, going from working with our attorneys in the criminal office at EPA and our agents in the field to trust and estates at night.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right. And what year was that?
That would have been spring of 2011.
2011. Okay.
Cool.
And so so definitely kind of had an idea what I wanted to do, and graduated. And unfortunately, it was tail end of the economy. And so when I came to DC, I heard something I never heard about, contract attorneys. And I ended up, it was one of those things where it's a blessing in disguise, not knowing much about it, but I kind of liked it because it was the intersection of law, politics, and business, major cases, huge firms with just wonderful training, and getting again into eDiscovery, where I had a little bit of background before law school and took off and hit the ground running. And it was really, I think, exciting to see how fast, I'll say, this industry constantly evolves. For example, we go to a lot of programs and CLEs, and we think we've hit the end of the earth with ephemeral messaging, big data, video, and we think, okay, that's it. And then in a couple months, the next program comes out, and we're all scratching our head because generative AI, the new hot kid on the town. And so that is something I think that's definitely exciting. Challenging, trying to keep up with it, but I will say programs like this one are laboratories of democracy, where we get to discuss topics, we get to hear pros and cons, and we kind of find out how we can navigate the gray area, that there's not always black and white answers.
Rachi, I'm going to put that under our title as a subheading. We're a laboratory for democracy.
A laboratory for democracy. Yes, I like that one.
We're the petri dish of the democratic process.
Of the eDiscovery, yeah, right.
An eDiscovery petri dish.
Petri dish, yes. Yes. So awesome. So so you started doing some contract work. And at that point you had decided you were living in DC. You like made the move, and you're sticking around the DC area. Very cool. And how long did you do contract work for?
I did that for 4 years. And same boss who hired me in law clerk program let me know about attorney opening in the Office of Pesticide program. And so before you get to there, just
Yeah, I'm curious what your thoughts are. You know, a lot of people feel that, so first of all, they go into contract work just because they have not, you know, they're kind of stuck. They're trying to figure out what they're doing, and then they have a hard time getting out of it.
Mhm.
You know, it's unfortunately a lot of the industry has become very not so nice to the contract attorneys.
Sure.
And they a lot of times feel like they're stuck.
Mhm.
So, you know, you did it for 4 years. You know, kind of what was your experience? What was your feeling? You know, you said a couple minutes ago just that, you know, it actually you loved the pace of it and the ability to see all kinds of different things. But what was, you know, what was your feeling while in it? And did you feel stuck? Did you feel like, you know, you were looking for opportunities to really just get out of it?
Mhm.
And any advice for people who are doing it and want to try to, you know, get out of it and find other paths?
Sure. Yeah. So I had some folks tell me something because I've experienced that kind of attitude, and I think unfortunately, at times that can go across the legal industry. Sometimes competition brings out some unfortunate sides of individuals, but I think somebody told me, you know, attorney-client relationships are somewhat temporary in nature if you think about it, because cases settle and move on. And so, yes, there's partners and associates who have probably more touch than a contract attorney. But that is something that goes across the industry as well. Another thing is back to my EPA days is whatever type of work you do it really well. And it would go back to kind of law school. Well, I want to be an environmental attorney, but then my core subjects weren't as great. And so I think, yes, and I think there's a lot of differentiators between different contract attorney programs, whether they're in-house or at the firm or at our company. And I think that is something for buyer, you know, for the attorney to take a look at, but do it really, really well. And always take what are the skills, the knowledge that I can take for myself. So if it's antitrust law or corporate investigations, so the core legal subjects, and then the technology that you're using. Because there's a still large segment of population, may shocking for all of us, that eDiscovery is kind of new for them. And so that is definitely something I think is exciting, because the federal judge who swore me in, we said, we know Nick wants to be a lawyer. We don't know what area he wants to go into. And it was kind of true, because I've really enjoyed a lot of different opportunities. And that's, I think, the nice thing about being an attorney as compared to a doctor is you don't see a cardiologist become an orthopedic. But I would definitely say is look at areas and industries and always being excited about what can you do better today out there to kind of, if you know, if you're satisfied with the current opportunity, there's always, you know, movement, not only in DC, but across the nation for things that may be of your interest.
Cool. Good advice. Okay, so now back to the career of Nick.
Yeah.
So 4 years as a contractor, he reaches out to you and says, "Hey, there's this opportunity at the EPA." Right?
Yeah. And so, you know, growing up, I always loved all the movies, you know, government and all they can do. When I got to EPA, we were just putting our foot in the eDiscovery pool. And so Big Brother was just starting to get a little bit. And I, you know, really enjoyed it because I was able to be on Tiger teams and all these different testing things for our eDiscovery program, and really enjoyed it. And also did virtual trainings way before online platform was a standard. And really enjoyed taking my knowledge to help immediate bosses and supervisors from FOIA, privacy, litigation, investigations, and in the Office of Pesticides, as well as in our other practice medium throughout the EPA and with our Office of General Counsel, and then our regional counsels who are throughout the U.S. as well. And that was something that really I felt excited that there is a way we can do this better, and not only internally, but before you get a really exciting tool, it's looking at your programs that you have and your policies in place to make things a little bit more efficient and accurate. And so with the FOIA space, I was really excited to work with some folks and to join a number of different organizations. And when I was at EPA, became interested in the Chief FOIA Officer Technology Committee. That's a lot of great leaders on there that are looking at philosophies and programs that the eDiscovery world has been tapped into for a while now. And so how can we make that area of government better and help transect across the nation? And then also learn from agency to agency about what they're doing and how can we all do it a little bit more efficient. Because I will say, challenge in DC is moving data down Pennsylvania Avenue. And that is something, especially with video, photo, large sets of data, has really become complex in the past couple of years.
It's interesting because, a lot of people, when they talk about eDiscovery and technology in the law, there's a lot of discussion around how, well, lawyers are incentivized not to be efficient, right? So when you come up with the next greatest technology that's going to save everyone hours and hours of time, there's always, and yes, there are those attorneys who are ahead of the game and are pushing technology, but in general terms, a little bit slower to adopt. Legal is a little bit slower to get involved in those things. But then when you look at the government, and especially around FOIA, where it's just a true cost. I mean, you have to do it. It's part of governance and part of making sure that information is available to the public. But there's absolutely every incentive to be as efficient as possible, as opposed to in the real world. I'm curious, did that kind of have anything in terms of shaping your approach on technology and your approach on these types of things, being so heavily focused on FOIA?
Sure. No, absolutely. Because the FOIA is a great law because one, it allows citizens to keep an eye on the government, prevent waste, fraud, and abuse, and maybe it's for benefits for various programs out there, and just identify successes, challenges, failures. And so that is something where you can put it off and then you can have lawsuits. So you're trying to manage that kind of avenue. But it's definitely something I think to honor the transparency that the FOIA created for us is trying to build that relationship with that customer who's a citizen. And so as we talk about trustworthy AI, I will say a lot of programs is building trust first, and then whatever technology can follow. And so that way it's, reaching out to somebody and calling, because there's not a lot of individuals, I would say, daily interact with the government. And I think it's the DMV or a few instances. And so it is exciting when somebody from the government calls and says, hey, we saw your request. What can we do for you? And that conversation can be helpful because it could be just a citizen looking for information about a loved one. It could be a news organization. It could be an organization that has an interest in one area or the other. And building that can really define, because in FOIA allows for a reasonable search. And so, yes, if you say anything, environmental, that's going to copy everybody's email signature.
Right.
What if they want a particular area? That helps focus it. And FOIA, unlike traditional litigation, Monday's a new day. You could ask for this set, you could go through it and realize I didn't get everything I wanted, and you could file another request. Or I think where those real dialogues happen is, this is what I'm looking for. And it helps the requester get the information they need in a nice time, but also helps the agency identify, because the Department of Justice has really been pushing
where the concerns of the public, right?
Right.
So,
and I would say DOJ has their annual and their chief FOIA officer reports, and they're also making sure agencies are performing the duties they need to as well.
Cool.
And that was a question I had, hearing you talk about this. So you're in the EPA, but you think that mindset about FOIA cuts across all the agencies? Because it does. It is obviously a law that affects them all.
Right. It is not applicable to the judiciary and Congress. And there's a few of presidential offices that it is not applicable to as well. But 90% of the federal government has to respond. And so that's why I get excited to serve on Chief Officer Technology Committee when we have individuals who have a really great following from their employees, from their counterparts, other agencies, and they're really excited about pushing the needle. What can we do better for a program, or what can we do better to train, or what can we do better to make sure we're reducing our timeline and making the backlog go down. And so that's where I think it pairs nicely with technology, where if you get a program and you have good training, you have good information, you have good responses, then the technology, I think, can pair nicely with it. And realize that sometimes, various updates for your phone aren't that jarring. That kind of similar mentality where we already embrace folks across the nation, whatever agency they're at, that we want to help improve their day-to-day work.
Right.
Cool. So Nick, okay, you're at the EPA, you're doing this work. How long were you there for?
So I started in the fall of 2016.
Okay.
And so summer of 2019, it was a Friday afternoon, I get an email saying, "Hey, would you like to come to the White House?" And my initial response was, "This is a cyber phishing email. I'm not clicking any links."
Right.
Do you mean for lunch or
Right.
And
tour? What?
and the funny thing was I had spoken on a CLE with a fellow attorney from DOJ, and a professional contact of his provided my name to my predecessor. So it was at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy to be a legal counsel. Wonderful interview process, and was truly dishonored to be with very smart individuals working on challenging issues. My detail was supposed to be 6 months, and so I ended up staying 2 years. But another interesting thing was most agencies have 400 lawyers doing very distinctive areas. The components have, we'll say, 3 to 5 attorneys working on all types of issues. Now, this is in addition to OMB and the White House Counsel, which have a bit more attorneys, but most components have about that. And so was excited to work on our ethics program. I was a deputy ethics official with our general counsel, financial disclosure. And so for political appointees that have to go over to the Office of Government Ethics, onboarding, was excited when we had a training program that we could make online, live, and virtual, doing a lot of different policy assistance with our experts who are detailed there, because you typically will find fellows from academia, nonprofit, detail leads from our government agencies, as well as as you can expect, your politicals. And the Office of Science and Technology Policy really has been doing a lot of exciting work over the past couple of years. And so for me, I would have those moments. Well, I think I just met one of the smartest individuals. Was blessed to work with quantum physicists who are super exciting to hear what that area can do for us, and really enjoyed working
I'm
with.
sorry to interrupt. You mean they were on board in the Office of Science and Technology?
Yep.
Wow.
They came from NIST, from National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Yeah. Because I got a mental image of, like, the professor in Independence Day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Who's being brought in?
I don't get out much,
No, but it definitely is something where, quantum, Oppenheimer is definitely one who had quantum physics. And for me, I would have to keep interrupting and asking, because it can be a very complex area to understand. But I always,
an attorney, so right. You can't be expected to know quantum mechanics. Come on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I went to law school. So
what's the hierarchy? Who does
that involves math? Hold on, there's math involved.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to know anything about that. Yeah.
What's the org chart look like? Who does the Office of Science and Technology Policy report to?
Yeah. Great question. So the director reports to the president, and then obviously we had different divisions, and then
you mean the president of the United States? That's correct.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty short entry on the org chart.
Yeah. And so what? Young guy from Midwest, from the EPA over there
Right.
really had to tighten up to get. But I will say it was a very just collegial staff and experience to because I think you have that, wow, this is a very rare opportunity, and two, working together to find some real solutions that could potentially have some exciting results.
Yeah.
And it was very fast paced and definitely would just find myself just, walking around the complex and the various rooms and just thinking the history of it, which was really, your 3 p.m. coffee. I think that really kind of put the wind in your sails to help you out a bit.
And were you in the executive office building? Where were
So I was
you?
in the Eisenhower. I was in the Eisenhower building.
Yep.
And so, yeah, definitely it was, when you walk around the campus, you see people on the news in the morning, you'd see them walking the hallways in the afternoon.
Right.
So yeah, definitely for an attorney, it was an awesome area to work in, and not only in the legal aspect, as I was brought into, but just working with our folks who've been in this area, some of them for 20 plus years, and what can they do for the areas they're kind of working on.
Right. So then after 2 years at the White House, you decide to go to private, to Deloitte.
Mhm.
A little bit about that decision making. I mean, you've now spent 6 years with the government. Kind of what was your thought process? What went through your mind as you made that decision?
Yeah, no. So yeah, Deloitte reached out and it definitely sounded like an exciting opportunity to areas that I had been focusing on. And I think that is something where it is good to have that kind of change throughout. And so, but it was in our government practice. And so again, that was another, I think, comforting feeling to work with government folks and colleagues, just at a different, I guess, jersey, we'll say.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's actually last week was 2 years that I've been with Deloitte.
Okay.
And
That's got to be tough though to give up that ID badge, right, from the White House.
that is that you are 100% correct, because just the experience, bringing the kids in, and my wife, my family members in, and our daughters would sometimes go, and we have all these fun experience of trick-or-treating, and they thought parking on the ellipse was too far to park, and then now the reality has hit them when they got to walk a couple blocks.
Right.
So there's that aspect. But another thing it was kind of neat is when I was a little kid, I woke my parents up in the middle of the night to ask them how light bulbs were made. And so instead of getting upset for my birthday, they got the book How Things Are Made. And so to really kind of honor them, what I did is when they came to take their West Wing tours, I got that book, and the director of the OSTP signed it for them.
Cool.
And I gave that to my president is thanking them for kind of sparking my interest in technology at a very, very young age.
That's great.
That's
so
pretty
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. To Tom's question, giving up the ID badge and the experience was challenging, and one of those just awesomeness kind of experiences you have in life.
Yeah.
But that's very cool. Okay, so what kind of work are you working on now?
Yeah.
So at Deloitte, so at Deloitte, I work in our and so a lot of this is, as Tom alluded to my title earlier, specialist leader. I think relationships and thought leadership, speaking at events. So that's been kind of the journey in 2 years that seemed like it was yesterday.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk technology a little bit. Government budgets are tight in general. Working with various different agencies now. Do you see people getting excited about the new technologies out there? Are they, government traditionally while we kind of talked about how specifically with FOIA, they're looking to be more efficient, but even so, they generally lag behind, whether it's the budget issues, whether it's just, changes in administration and everything else that's constantly happening. So as the pace of technology has picked up really over the last few years, especially, excuse me, do you see that that interest and that drive to push forward with technology? And I'm not talking any specific technologies here. We want to avoid getting too granular here, but just as a general approach, what are you seeing within the government practice, and as you at Deloitte are out there talking to people from all kinds of different agencies, kind of what's that general feeling like?
Yeah, and I think that is something, let's just take AI. It has been around since the 50s. And a couple of universities claim that they started it, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed. And I think it really had a resurgence about 5 years ago. And we had this, we use it so much in our home life, but not at work. But then I think folks were realizing that efficiency can help. And it is definitely something, as we talked about data growing and volumes of it growing, to even the fight for our daily work, we need these tools out there to help us. And then in the past year and a half, we'll say generative AI, so many industries are trying to figure this out, from royalties to, origination credit to, as we've seen, using it to potentially file a brief in court. Are you doing what you should have been doing regardless of the technology, and whether you're supervising associates? So this has really put the conversation out there. I think the other one is exciting about this area is access to justice. Lawyer Capital USA, we have a huge need for pro bono, and it's across the nation. And so this could be another opportunity to help that out there. The other one I think is exciting is for my former office, OSTP, put out a Bill of Rights for AI. OMB has a draft paper out there, and there's been a ton of hearings on the Hill, on the House and Senate on AI. And so I think there's a really rich conversation. There's a lot of debates about ethics. And there's a lot of I think how do we handle this and kind of lead the nation, and as well as our adversaries in this area, for ethics and privacy, making sure it doesn't take jobs but enhances jobs, as I like to say. And there's a lot, I think, of unknowns, but I think what is I'll say the laboratories of democracy is we discuss that, and it doesn't, I think, take individuals by surprise. But it is one where I think there's a lot of interest in what does this mean, and some is not sure now, but let's take a look. But let's put some guide rails on it, and there's been some meetings about how do we make sure it's appropriate and respects individuals, and training. Would you look at an algorithm, or how was a machine trained?
So you mentioned privacy, and I just want to ask real quick, because that's a real bugaboo with me. The Europeans seem to have, for years now, been ahead of us on concerns about privacy and the details of privacy. And they really seem to be ahead of us on the interplay between privacy and AI, as they showed with some of their proposed legislation last year, and then going through this year. Over here, we seem to have these two buckets. We got all these states passing privacy statutes, and we've got, like you said, a lot of work going on in the AI space. I saw the DOD had a task force announced, I think, yesterday. And but are people paying attention to that, to the crossover, if you will, between privacy and AI, and what those concerns are?
Yeah, and you brought up DOD, their task force Lima.
Yeah.
And I think, that's definitely something we're seeing more agencies across the federal space bring up that issue. And I think a couple of years ago, there was a Senate hearing where they even said, should we look at the GDPR? And so you're right. I think we have these two buckets. And this is where I think, how do we look at other countries, then look at how kind of we are founded? But I think also when we get in these areas, is a federal privacy standard more appropriate, or are we gonna have like the state cyber kind of situation, have a patchwork quilt? But how do we mirror those?
Which is already kind of happening on the state side. I mean, you now have 11 states that have, or whatever it is, that have individual privacy regulations.
Right.
So whether the decision's been made, it seems to be heading that direction anyway. So
yeah. And it's a great, because somebody go to a state because the privacy settings on a phone, or there's social media aspect of it. It's definitely one where that is becoming challenging, especially where I live, where you can be in 3 different states in a few different minutes. And so we have the online commerce, and there's so many
the interstate commerce implications of the internet.
That's a great question. But it's a great question, Tom, because I definitely think that type of articulation out there has really pushed folks to how do we get in on this for not only our employees, but our policies and our agencies, but also how do we look at what out there? Because I think with generative AIs, they're looking at applications where you see some law firms want it and some don't. And then there's this potential application where it can work without looking at client data. And so very interesting technology of that. But it could be, applications where, I'm allergic to a particular drug, and for my HIPAA protections, maybe I'm at one hospital, but then the next day I'm at another hospital. They don't line up. And so that is something I think it's definitely, there's a lot of debates and a lot of different fields out there. And I think it's one where, how do we marry these? And this is where I think having a good understanding of the legal framework, as you're talking about earlier, before technology is in place. And that way, I think you can understand the give and take sometimes of a situation. I think, my grandparents would be horrified if they saw the amount of content on social media. Where back in their day, they couldn't even imagine putting so many photos of your children online.
I'll tell you who's horrified, just parenthetically. There's a growing awareness, I think, of the younger generation. My son, who's only like 31, we were having a discussion the other day, and I got an email about TSA, sign up for TSA, right? And I've got I forget what it's called, but to get into the fast lane on the TSA. And his immediate response was, you know what? I don't want to give my information to anybody. I don't care who they are. I've given too much. Now, granted, down here in Louisiana, we just had a breach of the DMV, which was just horrifying for folks to learn about. But there's talking to him and his friends when they let me talk to them. Rocky, you know what I mean. It's interesting that they seem to have an awareness of that. Like, I'm giving stuff away, and I'm not comfortable with it. So I think that's good. I think we're getting a rising tide of awareness in the next generation. Like, hey, we need to, like you said, we need to put some guardrails on this.
No, and that's a pretty interesting conversation, because I think even look at grocery stores when they gave you the customer frequency card,
right?
And you got cents or $1 off here or there. We've kind of had this, and so sometimes you're talking, on our phone or devices pick up something, you get ads for something. Maybe you click on that, and but it's definitely something is. Do you want to give up your privacy rights, or don't you? And it's a really fascinating, and I think we've all been at CLEs where they show how hard it is to turn off all your privacy on your phone.
Right.
And do you want to do that, or don't you want to do it? But having the awareness and the knowledge, like I think your son is, that's a wonderful thing as compared to saying, who cares? Next thing you know, your email inbox is just flooded with content.
Right. But there's always it's how do we balance what we want, meaning we do want that personalization and we want that customization from our tools and from our technologies out there. But if you're not going to give away some level of that privacy, then it becomes impossible for the technology providers and software manufacturers to actually build these things. So there's always that balance, and
Right.
you always
Yeah.
need the people, actually watching out and doing what they can to make sure that true balance is there. Which sometimes we lean a little too far one way, or sometimes we lean a little too far the other. So
you bring up a great point, Nick, when you mentioned grocery store databases, the card, right?
Mhm.
Those are the biggest private databases in the country for years. Those Tom likes to buy cream corn, not kernel corn.
Yeah.
He likes black raspberry, and the accumulation of that data was immense. And now, of course, we've got accumulation of data. You've been talking about government agencies, but private companies, as we all know, who have been accumulating vast amounts of data, and then want to use that in some of their generative AI program. I mean, there's a whole third wheel here, third chair or leg on the stool.
Yeah.
And I'll even give you one more is why we got to be smart about this, is because historically offices would have bankers boxes and they would push it around. And even though Bill retired 10 years ago, we keep these boxes. And then we have huge warehouses. And now we get into the cloud space, and cyber becomes interesting, because if we just think, well, data is cheap, let's throw it all up there, it becomes a cyber issue, because one, they can sit and look at that, and it's just inefficient. Where if we're trying to, be a little bit more mature with our information governance programs, is what do we need, to put up there? And if like you'd mentioned, a breach occurred, how can we kind of isolate that a bit and not realize they know about Tom's birthday email that nobody thought about deleting. And so now when they put out the cyber, phishing email, they know that Tom has his birthday and it's in New Orleans. And so that
he likes chocolate cake. Yeah.
And he has cream corn.
Yeah.
So it's definitely one. I think your three-legged stools: privacy, AI, and cyber. So we get to the bigger information governance, is how do we have these? We always say it, but we need folks to sit at the table to have this conversation. And like you had mentioned, Tom, a little earlier about privacy, so we can get these thoughts and leaders kind of identifying before, unfortunately, a breach happens. That sometimes you can never have a perfect system, but the after action report identifies, what was the issue and how do we make improvements.
Yeah.
Okay, so we unfortunately have to start wrapping up. So we are going to move into a rapid fire question phase of the program. Nick, I'll ask you a couple different questions, then Tom's got one or two for you to wrap up the show. So let's start with some easy ones. Beach or snow?
I'd say beach. It's always great when the family's at the beach having a wonderful time in the ocean.
Okay. Favorite sport to watch?
Hockey.
Favorite sport to play?
I'd have to say tennis.
Tennis. Okay. Going back to hockey for 1 second. What team?
Growing up, it was Red Wings. Now that I'm a transplant, it's Capitals.
CAPS. Caps.
Yep.
Okay. What is your favorite movie to quote?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would have to say, either it'd be Enemy of the State,
Yep.
or JFK.
Or JFK.
What's a good quote from Enemy of the State?
That's a good one. I would have to say, I think not so much quotable, but just kind of the overall.
Yeah.
I think the one quote at the end is the "Who's watching the watchers."
Yeah.
And we've kind of seen more.
Seemed like
recently.
crazy science fiction 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Okay. If you could learn one new professional skill, what would it be?
It would probably be, I would say, a foreign language, to really travel professionally more, just to really interact and talk law, cross borders.
Okay. So speaking of travel, if you could live in one place around the world, not your current location, where would it be?
Hawaii. Went there for my honeymoon and loved it. It was just beautiful from the East Coast. It's kind of a journey, but it's a very relaxing and wonderful place. And thoughts and
Yeah.
prayers to everybody in Maui
Shout
right
out to
now.
them right now, though. Never
Yeah.
think of, raging fires in Hawaii.
Maui. Right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was just right there where the fires were happening. I was just there 6 months ago, and
Wow.
I was just saying to my wife, it's just absolutely insane that all these things that like we just took pictures of are all just gone.
Yeah.
One of the best times I ever had on well, it wasn't really a vacation. The ABA had a conference there years ago, and Gail and I went and spoke, and we took one day and went down and rented Harleys, someplace in downtown Honolulu, and just rode the beach road all the way around the island.
Yeah.
Stopped at food carts, got up on the North Shore and sat on the
Mhm.
beach. He, sat there and sunbathed for a while, and I smoked a couple of cigars, and it was just unbelievable when you get outside of the civilized parts of the town, and get on the little local roads riding the bikes. Yeah, at some point you're right on the ocean. It's yeah, wonderful.
Okay, Tom, your turn for a couple questions. Let's
Okay, 2 questions. First one's real quick. Beatles or Stones?
Stones.
There we go. Now I knew I liked this guy.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
And the last question that we ask everyone: if you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, living or dead, who would that person be, and what would you do when you got together?
Oh, that's a tough one because there's so many CLE programs I've gone to, and there's such a collection of experts. I mean, you guys had some awesome attorneys, judges, leaders in our industry. I would say I'll probably cheat a little bit. I would want to go to a program and just see everybody. Like after the pandemic is just after it was great after the pandemic when people are getting back out and you hadn't seen them for 2.5+ years,
Right.
and just catching up. And I love the conversation that happens with folks when they're speaking, and you think I didn't think of that idea, and they did. So I'd want to probably spend it, be kind of one of those classic. You have a wonderful dinner at the end of those events, and everybody's kind of catching up. So I'd have to say, eDiscovery party.
There you go. Well, speaking of which, we talked before we got online here, Nick. Apparently, all 3 of us will be at Relativity Fest, and you asked if I had heard from David Horrigan if he's planning on doing a dinner. So if anybody hears from David Horrigan, tell him to answer my email. That's September 26th through the 28th in Chicago. Look forward to it. Love Chicago. Love the people I get together with at that show. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, I get to ride the train up, which is great. I've already booked my room on the city of New Orleans, so I'll be taking my time meandering up to the city. It's great.
We'll see the challenge this year is I last year did Relativity Fest is off to a good start and would have people's photos, so I can't wait to do that again and see Rachi before he's heading out.
Yeah. Last year we barely caught each other, so
okay. All right. Well, we'll make sure
this year I'll be spending most of my time actually on the exhibit floor, which will be
you and your brother are going to have a booth. You said table, whatever it is.
So
we'll be able to pin you down. We'll be able to actually
one place. So
that's right.
Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, this has been great.
Really
great
awesome.
discussion.
Thank you.
I
Thanks for having me.
Talking about more is the whole issue of how we're dealing with technology, and people tend to, like you said, we do the Google search. I look on my map on my phone. I don't think about all the ways that these things are impacting me, and the implications for not just security but privacy and across the board. So it's great to hear that people are thinking about that and paying some attention to it. So, thanks so much for your time, and look forward to talking with you in person. All of our viewers, again, don't forget to go to the Gail O'Connor Spirit Award site on LinkedIn. You can nominate somebody for that award. Our nominations are open, and I want to say until mid-October-ish. and the award will be announced and presented as always on eDiscovery Day on December 1st. So thanks for everybody listening in, and we look forward to seeing you all next time on the eDiscovery channel.